In an era defined by a relentless flood of digital information, we find ourselves constantly searching for anchors of truth in a sea of fluctuating metrics. Every single day, millions of people wake up and immediately look at numbers to understand the state of their world. We look at the digital displays of financial markets, we watch the shifting figures on gas station signs as we drive to work, and we scroll through the endless stream of data points that try to tell us how to feel, what to believe, and who is winning. There is a quiet, heavy atmosphere that hangs over our daily routines, a subtle anxiety born from the feeling that the reality we experience with our own eyes does not always align with the reality that is presented to us on our screens. The local gas station, once a simple, mundane stop on a daily commute, has transformed into a psychological battleground. The glowing neon digits of the fuel pumps serve as a daily barometer of global stability, reflecting conflicts happening thousands of miles away in distant deserts and maritime straits. We stand there, nozzle in hand, watching the dollars and cents roll upward faster than the gallons, wondering if the promises of relief are real or merely illusions designed to keep us moving forward without asking too many difficult questions. This tension between personal experience and official narrative is not just about the cost of living. It is about the fundamental way we measure trust in the modern age. When those in leadership positions stand before the microphones or broadcast to millions of followers online, their words carry the power to shape markets, influence public confidence, and redefine the boundaries of what is considered factual. We have become accustomed to grand declarations, to claims of unprecedented success and historical achievements that sound almost too perfect to be true. In a world where public perception is the ultimate currency, the temptation to sculpt that perception to one's own advantage is overwhelming. But numbers, in their purest mathematical form, are stubborn things. They do not easily bend to the will of rhetoric, nor do they disappear just because a different story is being told. When we look beneath the surface of these grand pronouncements, we often find a deep and fascinating chasm between the world as it is described and the world as it is actually lived by ordinary citizens who are just trying to balance their household budgets. It was against this backdrop of economic uncertainty and global tension that a sudden, late-night announcement sent shockwaves through the media landscape. A statement of absolute triumph was delivered directly to the public, claiming a massive, historic surge in popular support. This was not just a minor fluctuation in the polls, it was presented as a monumental victory, a soaring indicator of public approval reaching a stunning 59%. To the casual observer, such a number would suggest a nation united, a collective endorsement of current directions, and a powerful validation of leadership. It painted a picture of widespread satisfaction, of a public that had looked at the challenges of the day and decided that everything was going exactly as it should. Accompanying this claim of overwhelming popularity was an equally bold assertion regarding the economic front, specifically that the burden of energy costs was rapidly dissolving, with fuel and oil prices plunging to welcome new lows. For a moment, this message offered a glimpse of a brighter, more stable reality, a comforting assurance that the hard times were fading into the past. However, as the dust began to settle from this late-night proclamation, a very different picture began to emerge from the data compiled by independent observers and statistical tracking organizations. Before we dive deeper into the fascinating details of this developing story and unravel the truth behind these competing realities, we kindly ask you to take a brief moment to subscribe to our channel. By joining our community, you ensure that you will never miss our deep dives into the stories that shape our world, helping us bring you the clear, unbiased context you need to navigate these complex times. The contrast between the bold, optimistic declarations from the top and the hard, cold data gathered on the ground is where our investigation truly begins. It raises profound questions about how information is used, how public sentiment is measured, and what happens when the narrative we are given collides head-on with the statistical reality of the spreadsheets and the economic pressure felt by millions at the pump. In the next part of our report, we will look directly at the actual numbers, examining the major independent trackers that paint a startlingly different picture of public approval, and we will analyze the delicate, volatile situation in the global oil markets that continues to keep energy prices on a turbulent roller coaster. When we peel back the layers of the triumphant late-night statement declaring a 59% approval rating, we immediately run into a stark and undeniable wall of statistical data. To understand the depth of this discrepancy, we have to look closely at the institutions that dedicate their entire operational structure to measuring the complex landscape of public opinion. Organizations like RealClearPolling, the New York Times, and the Economist do not simply guess at how the public feels. They employ sophisticated, multi-layered scientific methodologies to aggregate dozens of national polls, filtering out anomalies and biases to find a reliable middle ground. When the claim of a near 60% approval rating was broadcast, analysts immediately turned to these highly respected tracking databases to locate the source of this massive surge. What they discovered was not just a slight variation or a minor error in calculation, but a complete and total absence of any supporting evidence. In fact, across all major national indexes, there was not a single credible poll that showed the approval rating even approaching the 50% threshold, let alone soaring to the heights that had been boasted. Instead, the actual numbers recorded on the servers of these tracking organizations revealed a reality that was not just different, but almost a mirror image of the claim. Presenting a profound mystery as to where the figures in the announcement had originated, to truly comprehend the scale of this divide, it is necessary to examine what these tracking systems were actually showing in real time. According to the comprehensive index maintained by The Economist, the public sentiment was positioned in a remarkably different space than what was reported in the late-night broadcast. Instead of 59% of the population expressing approval, the data revealed that 59% of respondents actually expressed disapproval. This statistical inverse meant that the actual average approval rating was sitting at a much lower 36%, leaving the overall rating a staggering 23 percentage points underwater. The term underwater is used by statisticians and political analysts to describe a situation where a leader's negative ratings significantly outweigh their positive support, signaling a deep and persistent dissatisfaction among the electorate. This negative trend was not an isolated finding unique to a single publication. It was firmly corroborated by other major analytical institutions. The New York Times tracker, which utilizes its own advanced analytical models to weight various polls based on historical accuracy, placed the approval rating at 19 percentage points underwater. Meanwhile, the aggregate tracker at RealClearPolling, which is widely watched for its comprehensive averages, showed a disapproval rating of 56.5%. This consistency across multiple independent methodologies underscores a shared scientific consensus that contradicts the narrative of an unprecedented high, raising the tension between official rhetoric and empirical observation to a boiling point. But the late-night announcement did not stop at public approval metrics. It also made a bold declaration regarding the state of the economy, pointing to the declining cost of oil and gas as a major victory for the consumer. This is an area where the narrative of success becomes far more complex, weaving together elements of partial truth with a much harsher ongoing reality. It is technically true that the prices at the pump have descended from the extreme, painful peaks that were reached during the height of the recent military conflict in the Middle East. When the war with Iran was dominating the headlines, global energy markets experienced a massive shockwave, driving the cost of crude oil to levels that threatened to disrupt the global supply chain and caused immediate financial distress for families trying to keep their vehicles fueled. In the weeks and months that followed those peak moments, a temporary stabilization occurred, allowing the price of a gallon of fuel to drift downward from those historic highs. This gradual decline is the factual grain of truth that was highlighted in the official announcement, presented as proof of economic recovery and effective oversight. However, this presentation selectively omits a critical piece of context that ordinary drivers feel every single time they pay at the station. Even with the recent declines, fuel prices remain approximately $1 higher per gallon than they were before the hostilities broke out, meaning that the baseline cost of living remains significantly elevated and the economic relief is relative rather than absolute. This fragile state of economic equilibrium was shattered once again on Monday, proving just how rapidly the global landscape can shift and how vulnerable our daily lives are to international instability. Renewed hostilities in the conflict zone sent a fresh wave of panic through the financial capitals of the world, causing oil prices to spike almost immediately as trading opened. The sudden escalation demonstrated that the energy market is not a stable plateau that has successfully moved past the crisis, but rather a volatile, high-stakes environment where a single event can erase weeks of marginal price drops in a matter of hours. This immediate market reaction illustrates the immense difficulty of declaring victory over economic forces that are fundamentally tied to the unpredictable nature of geopolitical conflict. The tension in the oil sector is not just an abstract concern for commodity traders, it represents a direct, ongoing threat to the financial security of households worldwide. As the rising cost of crude oil quickly translates into higher costs for transportation, manufacturing, and consumer goods. By examining these two distinct areas of the official announcement, the disputed polling data and the volatile energy market, we begin to see a broader pattern of how information is framed. Setting the stage for a deeper analysis of the mechanisms at play and the long-term implications for public trust in a world where the truth is constantly contested, the rapid escalation of events on Monday serves as a stark reminder of how quickly the ground can shift beneath our feet, leaving both political strategists and economic analysts scrambling to adjust their models. In the high-stakes boardrooms of global oil conglomerates and inside the secure briefing rooms of national security agencies, the sudden flare-up of tension was met with immediate concern. As experts watched the digital tickers track the upward climb of crude oil futures. This renewed instability highlights a profound truth about the modern world. The narratives created by public figures are constantly in a race against real-time developments that they cannot control. While an official statement can try to paint a picture of permanent relief and widespread public support, the relentless flow of global events and the unyielding accuracy of mathematical averages have a way of asserting themselves. This collision between constructed perception and raw, unpredictable reality creates a deep sense of unease among the public, who find themselves caught in the middle of a war for their attention and their belief. As we prepare to examine the deeper implications of this disconnect in the final chapter of our report, we must look not just at the numbers themselves, but at the psychological toll of living in an environment where the most basic facts of our economic and political life are subject to constant dispute and revision. This ongoing battle over statistics and energy prices is not merely a debate about decimal points or the cost of a single gallon of fuel. It is a fundamental struggle over the nature of shared reality in the modern era. When the mechanisms designed to measure public opinion and economic health become objects of intense dispute, the very foundation of public trust begins to erode. For decades, the process of polling was viewed as a neutral, scientific tool used to gauge the collective temperature of a nation, helping leaders and citizens alike understand the diverse perspectives that make up the public sphere. Similarly, the movement of global commodity prices was understood as an objective reflection of supply, demand, and international stability. When these objective metrics are reframed to fit a specific, highly optimistic narrative, it forces us to confront a vital question about how we, as a society, determine what is true. The widening gap between the claims made at the highest levels and the empirical data tracked by independent agencies creates a kind of cognitive dissonance for the average citizen, who must navigate a world where official declarations of success are constantly contradicted by the reality of their own bank statements and the consensus of statistical science. To understand the deeper significance of this divide, we must look at the journeys of the people who find themselves at the center of these statistical and economic shifts. The political analysts, the pollsters, and the energy market experts are not just passive observers, they are highly trained professionals who spend their lives attempting to bring clarity to an incredibly complex world. For the data scientists who manage trackers at places like The Economist or RealClearPolling, their work is a matter of strict methodology and professional integrity. They must constantly refine their algorithms to account for changing communication habits, such as the decline of landline phones and the rise of mobile communication, to ensure that their samples are truly representative of the population. Their journey is one of quiet, persistent scientific labor, operating in an environment where their findings are frequently scrutinized, challenged, or dismissed when they do not align with desired outcomes. When their carefully aggregated data is met with claims of a 59% approval rating that has no basis in their databases, it highlights the immense pressure these institutions face to defend the validity of scientific measurement against the overwhelming power of digital rhetoric. In the energy sector, a similar drama unfolds every day, involving a completely different group of individuals whose lives are deeply impacted by the volatile fluctuations of the global oil market. From the rig workers operating in remote oil fields to the logistics managers coordinating shipping lanes through high-risk waters, The cost of fuel is a matter of daily survival and operational viability. The recent hostilities in the Middle East have shown just how interconnected our global systems have become, where an incident in a distant strait can immediately affect a family-owned transport business in a completely different hemisphere. For these small business owners and independent contractors, the fluctuating price of fuel is not a political talking point, but a critical factor that determines whether they can keep their doors open or feed their families. When they hear reports that prices have come down and the economic crisis has been resolved, only to pull up to the pump and find that prices are still $1 higher than they were before the conflict began, the disconnect is profound. It reveals that the economic pain is not just a temporary statistic, but a prolonged reality that continues to shape the decisions, anxieties, and aspirations of millions of working people. This persistent gap between rhetoric and reality has far-reaching consequences that extend well beyond the immediate news cycle. When public figures present numbers that are wildly at odds with established facts, it contributes to a broader cultural skepticism, where the public begins to doubt all sources of information, regardless of their accuracy or scientific rigor. This environment of generalized skepticism makes it incredibly difficult to build consensus on critical issues or to address the very real economic and social challenges that require collective action. If we cannot agree on the basic facts of where we stand, whether that is the level of public support for leadership or the actual state of the energy markets, it becomes nearly impossible to chart a path forward. The role of journalism and independent research in this environment is more vital than ever, serving as a critical checkpoint to verify claims, provide necessary context, and ensure that the public has access to the objective truth. It is a challenging and often thankless task, requiring a steadfast commitment to accuracy and a willingness to confront powerful narratives with hard, verifiable evidence as we look to the future. The volatility we have witnessed in both the polling data and the oil markets suggests that we are entering a period of prolonged instability. The sudden rise in crude prices on Monday, sparked by renewed hostilities, demonstrates that the global energy infrastructure remains highly vulnerable to geopolitical shocks, and that any claims of permanent economic relief are premature at best. Meanwhile, the ongoing struggle to define the terms of public opinion ensures that the communication landscape will remain highly polarized and contested. In this environment, the ultimate responsibility falls upon the individual citizen to seek out reliable, multi-sourced information and to look beyond the surface of grand declarations. By understanding the methodologies behind the numbers and the global forces driving the markets, we can begin to bridge the gap between constructed narratives and the world as it actually exists. Empowering ourselves with the knowledge needed to make informed decisions in an increasingly complex and unpredictable world. This brings us to the end of our comprehensive report on the complex interplay between public perception, political rhetoric, and global economic forces. We have journeyed through the initial shock of the late-night announcement, analyzed the precise data points that challenge those claims, and explored the real-world impact of market volatility on the lives of ordinary citizens and industry professionals alike. Throughout this investigation, our goal has been to provide you with the deep context and unbiased analysis necessary to understand the forces shaping our collective reality. We hope this report has shed light on the vital importance of independent verification and the critical role that objective data plays in maintaining